Hey guys, tonight we're going to wander back in time to a place that smells like ripe figs, feels like sunshine wrapped in dew, and hums softly with the lazy rustle of leaves. Welcome to the Garden of Eden. You're barefoot, of course. The grass feels like memory foam. The breeze is scented with jasmine and possibility. And somewhere nearby, a snake is practicing its TED Talk. It's the very beginning of everything, and also the beginning of all the trouble. You probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes here, by the way. No Wi-Fi, no coffee, and the only dress code is fig leaf chic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where and when you're tuning in from, bonus points if you're hiding from existential dread in your closet at 3:14 a.m. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing next to two very confused people. They look perfect. No acne, no taxes, no trauma. Their names, Adam and Eve. And yes, they're the original IT couple, but they've only just been created, so everything they know about love, consent, or interpersonal conflict resolution is, let's call it beta version. And here you are, watching them frolic through Eden. They laugh, they pick fruit, they name animals with suspiciously modern flair. That's a sloth? Really? There's no shame, no deadlines, and certainly no user manual. But looming right in the middle of paradise is that tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, with a neon sign, metaphorically speaking, that basically screams, "Do not touch." Now here's the weird thing. God has just created the entire universe meticulously detailed down to the last mitochondrion, omniscient, omnipotent, all-knowing. And yet, He puts the one forbidden object in the middle of the garden, not off to the side, not behind a locked gate, no. Right smack in the center. It's like putting a giant red button on your kitchen counter labeled, "Don't press unless you want to destroy reality." So the question arises, was it a test or a setup? You watch as Eve strolls past the tree. She hesitates. A breeze whispers through the leaves. Then comes the snake. Now here's the twist. The serpent is described as more cunning than any of the wild animals God had made. Meaning, it wasn't some rogue demon crashing the party. This slippery salesman was part of the official Eden launch package. The snake, in full marketing mode, pitches the fruit like it's an Apple product drop. "You won't die," it says smoothly. God's just worried you'll be like him, knowing good and evil. Tempting, right? The promise of moral awareness, self-determination, and possibly the ability to invent sarcasm. So Eve bites. Then Adam. And somewhere, possibly sipping cosmic tea, God just knows. And here's where the storytelling gets wild. Instead of swooping down to confiscate the fruit or give a warning text, God shows up after the damage is done, like a parent who walks in just after the glitter bomb explodes in the living room. And then comes the famous moment. "Adam, where are you?" Now here's the part that makes you pause. If God is truly omniscient, why ask? The question isn't for information, it's for confrontation. It's like when your mom walks into the kitchen and says, "Who spilled the milk?" Even though she's staring directly at the puddle around your feet. Adam, bless his newly aware little heart, blames Eve. Eve blames the snake. And the snake, silent now, probably just shrugs and slithers off to develop TikTok. Punishments are handed out like party favors at a Greek tragedy. Eve gets pain in childbirth. Adam gets a lifetime of hard labor. The snake, cursed to crawl and eat dust forever. And the whole human race, evicted. But somewhere beneath the theological fireworks, you can't help but wonder, if God didn't want them to eat the fruit, why even make the fruit? Why give them free will and then punish them for using it? And maybe, just maybe, God didn't say, "You're doomed." Maybe what he thought, quietly with a sigh, was more along the lines of, well, that didn't take long. Because let's be honest, if you were two brand new humans with zero experience, placed in a garden with a forbidden tree and a talking snake, how long would you last? There's an odd tenderness in the chaos. God doesn't destroy them. Clothes them. He sends them out with some sense of purpose. And you get the feeling he's watching, maybe shaking his head, but not surprised. Because that, perhaps, is the lesson no one carved into Sunday school flannel boards. That God wasn't shocked. He knew. And he let it happen anyway. Because real love, as inconvenient as it sounds, requires choice. Even stupid ones. So here you are, outside the gates now. The cherubim with flaming swords shimmer behind you. The air is colder. There's dirt under your nails. You're hungry, mortal, embarrassed, but oddly, free. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. There's a theory some theologians toss around after their third glass of communion wine, that Eden wasn't meant to last forever, that it was the tutorial level. Beautiful, yes, but unsustainable. That innocence is precious, but maturity is sacred. And that God, far from being angry, might have thought, now the real story begins. So next time someone tells you everything went downhill because of a piece of fruit, you can smile softly and say, no, it began because we asked questions. And in your own life, when you feel like you've bitten into something forbidden, whether that's a relationship, a career move, or a second slice of cake, you can take heart. Even when paradise is lost, the story doesn't end. It just gets more human. Now don't worry, we're only just beginning this journey. Eden was the first oops, but far from the last. And remember that tree? You'll see echoes of it again. In deserts, on mountains, even on crosses. But for now, breathe. Easy. You're out of the garden. But maybe closer to something more real. Ready for what happens next? Just wait till we get to the flood. You're ankle deep in mud now. Not metaphorically, actual mud. Thick, squelching, soul-soaking kind. The kind that oozes into places you didn't even know you had. The air tastes like wet wood and rising panic, and all around you, the sky is weeping like it just read the comment section of humanity. This is the flood, not your average spring shower, mind you. This is the kind of rain that makes boats look like divine genius and umbrellas like optimistic denial. And right in the middle of this storm stands a man named Noah, who smells faintly of goat, sawdust, and probably a lot of skepticism from his neighbors. Now, rewind just a little. According to the story, things on Earth had gotten bleak. Humanity, in its usual flair for chaos, had gone from innocent apple nibbling to full-blown moral anarchy. Cities were corrupt, violence was rampant, and let's be real, if Twitter had existed, it would have been a daily dumpster fire of ancient memes and sacrificial goat scams. And here comes the strange part. The Bible says, God regretted making humans. Wait. Regret? That word hits different when it comes from an all-knowing being. You regret burning your toast. God apparently regretted the entirety of the human experiment, like someone who adopted a cute puppy only to discover it bites, howls, and chews through eternity. But here's a thought. Maybe God didn't say I made a mistake. Maybe he just thought, quietly, well, this escalated quickly. So enters Noah, a man who by all accounts was blameless in his generation, which, given the state of humanity at the time, is kind of like saying he was the best-behaved kid at a frat party. But still, he gets the golden ticket. God tells Noah to build an ark, not a canoe, not a sturdy cottage on a hill, a massive wooden box designed to float through divine wrath. And here's where the story gets suspiciously logistical. 2 of every animal, including mosquitoes and pandas. You ever try convincing a sloth to hurry up 2 by 2? You'd have better luck organizing toddlers at a candy buffet. But Noah doesn't ask questions, at least not any that got written down. He just builds. Hammer, nail, pitch, repeat, for decades. While everyone else laughs, gossips, and probably bets dinars on how long until he gives up. Meanwhile, up in the cosmic boardroom, you can almost picture God pacing, fingers steepled, watching, waiting, not gloating, not furious, maybe just disappointed. Now that's a dangerous word. disappointed, because it implies expectation, hope, that maybe he thought humanity would choose better, live better, and instead, this. The rain starts slow, like it always does. You know how it goes. A few drops, a breeze, and then, crack. Heaven opens, earth splits, and the waters come like they've been waiting centuries to let loose. You hear screams. You see rooftops vanish. Trees surrender. The very ground seems to sigh and give up. But inside the ark, it's strangely calm. Not pleasant. Mind you, it smells like fur, dung, and wet wood. The giraffes are grumpy, the hyenas are cackling, but the ark floats, carried by judgment and mercy in equal measure. And you, pressed up against the damp timbers, might wonder, did God really mean to wipe out everyone? Every village? Every child? That's a heavy broom for a divine spring cleaning. Here's the secret most Sunday schools skip. Some ancient traditions say God cried during the flood, that he mourned what had to be done, that he watched every wave with a heart as heavy as the sea itself. Because here's the twist. God doesn't delight in destruction. He's not Zeus tossing lightning bolts for giggles. He's more like a parent watching their child self-destruct, knowing they have to let them face the consequences, even when it breaks them. And as the ark drifts through endless gray, you start to feel it too. The weight, the sorrow, the silence. Days blend into nights. Hope feels like a rumor. But then, a thud, a mountain, a raven sent out, then a dove with an olive branch. You feel the air shift, the sun blink through the clouds like it's asking, is it safe to come out yet? Noah steps out onto dry ground, and what's the first thing he does? He doesn't party. He doesn't plant crops. He builds an altar, because sometimes the only way to process survival is through gratitude. Even bitter, confusing, trembling gratitude, God sees this. And then comes something quietly stunning. A promise. A rainbow. Not a neon "I'm sorry" or a booming celestial apology, but a vow that he'll never do it like this again. And maybe, just maybe, what God thought wasn't, I was too harsh, but something closer to, next time, I'll find another way. Because punishment cleanses, but it doesn't teach. Mercy does. Here's a detail you may not have noticed. After the flood, God gives humans something new. Rules, yes. But also, permission to eat meat. Cue the first barbecue. And he doesn't demand perfection anymore, just a little bit of order. Scholars still debate what the flood really was. A local disaster? A global event? A parable wrapped in weather? Some say, it's mythology, others call it memory. But all agree, it changed the trajectory of human thought. Because from that point on, we began to realize something hauntingly beautiful. That survival is a kind of sacredness. That even when we mess up, utterly, painfully, stupidly, there's a boat waiting, somewhere. And you've got your own flood stories, don't you? Times you felt submerged, times when everything you loved was drowning, times when you thought, this is it. And yet here you are, listening, breathing, dry. Maybe your ark wasn't wooden. Maybe it was a person, a poem, a late-night phone call, a ridiculous plan that somehow worked. And maybe somewhere in the silence after your storm, you heard what Noah might have heard too. God not saying, you should have known better, but thinking, you're still mine. So tonight, as the rain taps gently outside your window, remember this. You've made it through your flood. And that rainbow? It's not just a symbol, it's a whisper from the divine saying, I haven't given up on you. Now rest easy. Next up, we're building towers, and this time it's our pride, not the rain, that gets us in trouble. You're walking now, not through mud or storm, but through dust. Dry, ancient, whispering dust. It coats your sandals, clings to your robes, slips into your nose with every breath like history itself trying to settle in your lungs. The air here hums low and tense like a crowd holding its breath before a riot. Welcome to Babel. The sun beats down mercilessly, but no one stops to rest. Hammers ring out. Stone grinds on stone. Men shout instructions in a dozen dialects, but for now, everyone still understands each other. This is the city of ambition, and at its center rises a tower. Not just any tower, a monument, a declaration, a divine mic drop aimed at the heavens. You crane your neck to look up and the thing is ridiculous, so tall it disappears into the glare of the sun. The kind of structure that makes you wonder if someone got drunk on ego and blueprints, because this isn't just architecture. This is a message. The people say they're building it to reach the heavens. But let's be honest, they're not building to worship. They're building to rival, to prove. It's not about getting closer to God. It's about not needing Him anymore. It's about saying, we can do it ourselves now. Thanks, but no thanks. And maybe somewhere out there, God is watching. Quiet, thoughtful, not angry, just interested. See, God never said, thou shalt not build skyscrapers. He never forbade ambition. But perhaps, just perhaps, He thought something like, so they still don't get it. Now here's the strange twist. Up until this moment, the people of Earth are still united. One language, one culture, one big, bustling construction. Site of shared human purpose. You might think that's a good thing, but think again. Unity isn't always noble. A mob is unified. So is a cult, even your aunt's Facebook conspiracy group. And when that unity is aimed at self-glorification, when the shared goal is not beauty or justice or kindness, but immortality through arrogance, that's when the foundations start to crack. You walk among them now, watching the bricks go up. Some are smooth, almost machine perfect. These people have figured things out. Geometry, weight distribution, early urban planning. It's impressive. But beneath it all, there's an unease you can't quite name, a kind of collective fever. The tower grows taller, yes, but so do their egos. And somewhere above, God decides it's time. Now, if this were a different kind of story, you'd expect a thunderbolt, a booming voice, a divine wrecking ball swinging down from the clouds. But no, God chooses something quieter. Language. 1. Morning, they wake up and can't understand each other. Simple as that. The mason asks for more mortar and gets handed a dead goat. The engineer screams about a cracked beam and is told the weather's nice today. Panic spreads like wildfire, because nothing kills a project faster than miscommunication. It's kind of brilliant, really. God doesn't destroy the tower. He just lets it crumble under the weight of its own confusion. No drama, no fire and brimstone. Just a slow, confused fizzle. Like a group chat, where everyone's autocorrect malfunctions at once. And here's where it gets interesting. The story isn't just about punishment. It's about redirection. Because after Babel, the people scatter across plains, forests, mountains. They take their words, now different, and begin to shape new stories, new rhythms, new cultures. Language becomes poetry, music, lullabies, whispered in tents and palaces. New ways to say I love you. New ways to say run. It's almost as if God thought they were meant to fill the earth, not just stack themselves on top of one another. You see, the tower wasn't the sin. The motive was to make a name for themselves. That phrase comes up again and again in the old texts. Let us make a name for ourselves. Not let us serve, or let us discover, or let us connect. No, they wanted fame. Glory. A monument to human pride tall enough to poke God in the foot. And maybe God thought, if I let them finish this, they'll believe they're untouchable. And that's the most dangerous lie of all. You pause now, sitting on a broken stone that once fit snug into the tower's wall. Around you, the scaffolding has fallen. Tools lie rusting. The wind carries fragments of speech, Arabic, Tamil, Gaelic, Quechua, whispers of future tongues. the beginning of a beautiful chaos. And you realize something. The fall of Babel wasn't the end of unity. It was the beginning of diversity, a gift disguised as a scattering. Sure, it meant confusion, misunderstanding, wars, but it also meant richness, flavor, spice markets and sonnets, folktales and philosophy, languages that would one day make love sound like honey, or fear sound like thunder. Historians still argue about the roots of Babel. Was it real? Allegorical? Based on the ancient ziggurats of Mesopotamia, those temple towers that reached for the sky? Maybe. Maybe not. What we do know is this: humans build, and humans forget. We forget our limits. We forget our place. But sometimes when the scaffolding falls, we remember. And maybe that's what God was waiting for. So tonight, as you curl deeper into your blanket, think of that tower, not as a failure but as a turning point. A reminder that not every interruption is a punishment. Some are course corrections, some are gentle nudges saying, this isn't who you're meant to be. Because maybe what God never said, but might have thought, wasn't don't reach for the sky, but make sure you know why you're reaching. And next time, maybe you build something less about your name and more about your neighbor. Next up, we're trading towers for tents. A man will be asked to leave everything behind for a promise he can't see. And somehow, he says, yes, get ready to walk with Abraham. You're in the desert now. The tower is far behind you, left in ruins and echoes. The wind is dry but not cruel. It carries something else, a whisper of movement, the quiet pull of something beginning. There's no map in your hand, just an ache in your chest that tells you you're not where you need to be yet, and that right there makes you a little like him. Abraham, or, well, Abram, at this point in the story. No fancy titles yet, no empires, no miracles, just a man with a wrinkled face and sandals worn down to nothing, standing outside his tent, looking up at the stars with a kind of patient madness, because he's been told something strange. Not out loud, not with trumpets. Just a call. A voice that's not a voice. The kind of thing you feel deep in your ribs, like a secret only your bones understand. God didn't say, pack your bags and I'll show you a beach house. He said, go. Leave everything you know. Your country, your people, your father's house. I'll show you where later. Now imagine that for a second. Imagine being told to abandon your home, your inheritance, your retirement plan, and follow a vague promise into the unknown. No GPS, no forwarding address. No, just faith and a very long walk. If you or I heard that kind of request today, we'd probably blame it on bad Wi-Fi or a weird dream after eating too much cheese. But Abraham? He says yes. And he walks. That's the part people forget. The story doesn't start with a miracle. It starts with movement, obedience before reward. He walks without knowing where it leads, which is, honestly, kind of insane, or brave, or both. You can almost hear God thinking, not saying, this one's different. This one doesn't need to see the whole picture. Now he's not alone. His wife Sarai, equally impressive, equally long-suffering, is right there beside him, holding her own grief quietly. No children, no answers, just the same burning sky day after day. And then one evening God does speak, this time with clarity. Look up, he says. Count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you'll have. Now this would be a beautiful moment, except for the fact that Abraham is quite frankly old. Not just he gets senior discounts old. We're talking he probably creaks when he smiles old. And Sarai? She's right there beside him, rolling her eyes politely, because biology exists and they are not exactly spring chickens, but still, Abraham believes, not in some easy Instagram quote way. He believes with his feet. He keeps walking, keeps pitching tents in places that don't feel like home, keeps holding on to a promise with no delivery date. And maybe, just maybe, God thinks something like, this is why I didn't give up on them. Now here's the odd, almost funny part. After all that, after years of wandering and waiting, still no baby, just sand in the tent and livestock that keep escaping. So Sarai, Like any reasonable human being tired of waiting for a divine Amazon delivery, comes up with a plan. She tells Abraham to sleep with her servant, Hagar. You raise an eyebrow. It's okay, so did the angels probably. But Abraham agrees, and Hagar does get pregnant. It's messy, of course. Emotions flare. Sarai is jealous. Hagar feels used. The household becomes less Holy Family and more daytime soap opera. The child born, Ishmael, is caught in the tension. His future becomes complicated before he can even speak. And God? Well, he doesn't smite anyone. He watches, waits. Maybe he's thinking, I promised you something, but it has to be on my time, not yours. Eventually, when Abraham is 99, basically, ancient even by ancient standards, God appears again. This time he changes names. Abram becomes Abraham. Sarai becomes Sarah. And with the name change comes something new. A baby, not from Hagar, from Sarah. Yes, the barren one. Yes, the one who laughed out loud when she overheard the prophecy. And who could blame her? But laughter doesn't disqualify you from a miracle. In fact, maybe it invites one. The child is born. Isaac. His name means, he laughs. You can almost picture God smiling a little at that one. Now here's the part the Sunday school stories tend to skip over. After Isaac is born, Sarah demands that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away, and Abraham agrees. It's painful, complicated. Some would call it cruel. Others would call it survival. Hagar wanders into the wilderness with her son, nearly dying of thirst before God steps in, offering water, hope, and a future. Because the story of faith is never clean, never easy. It's full of bad decisions, deep regrets, and still somehow grace. Historians still puzzle over Abraham. Was he a myth? A tribal chieftain? A symbol? All we know is that his legacy echoes in 3 of the world's major religions. His name passed down through Jews, Christians, and Muslims like a candle passed from hand to hand in the dark. But for tonight, forget the legacy. Focus on the man. A tired old wanderer under an open sky, whispering prayers to a God who doesn't always answer right away. A man who moved before he understood, who stumbled more than once but still stayed the course. And maybe what God never said but might have thought wasn't, I need perfect people, but I need people who keep walking. So now, as you lie back and close your eyes, think of Abraham's steps. Think of Sarah's laughter. Think of a tent flapping in the wind, lit by starlight and stubborn hope. Because maybe faith isn't about certainty. Maybe it's about motion. And next time, we'll follow someone else into motion. A boy raised in palaces, destined for power, who chooses instead a burning bush and a call he doesn't want. Get ready. Moses is coming. You're somewhere in the reeds now. The desert has cracked and given way to the slow, muddy banks of a river. The water is warm and shallow, too still to trust. Something's hiding beneath it. But not monsters, not fish, not even crocodiles. Destiny. But right now, it's screaming. A baby's cry, carried in a basket of pitch and papyrus, floating in the Nile. You crouch low, watching the scene unfold. A woman with tired eyes and desperate fingers pushes the basket away, not because she wants to, but because the world has left her no choice. Pharaoh's orders are clear. Every Hebrew boy must be thrown into the river. Mass infanticide, government issued. Efficiency in evil. But this woman, Jochebed, has just enough defiance to trust the water more than the empire. And the river? It delivers, because Pharaoh's own daughter, while bathing with her servants, hears the cry. She opens the basket. A Hebrew child, marked by fate, floating like a riddle. And she doesn't toss it back. She lifts him. You're watching history pivot on a moment of maternal impulse. The baby is named Moses. You'd think this is the start of something epic, and it is. But first, silence. Time passes. The boy grows up behind palace walls, dressed in gold, fluent in hieroglyphs, schooled in astronomy and military tactics. The child of slaves raised like a prince. He's got the sandals, the eyeliner, the whole wardrobe. But here's the twist. He never forgets. Moses knows who he is. He knows he's Hebrew, And that knowledge, it doesn't just sit quietly in his chest, it burns. You can almost hear God not saying, "Watch this one closely, he's got a fire in him." That fire explodes one day. Moses sees an Egyptian overseer beating a Hebrew slave. Maybe the crack of the whip sounds like something ancient in his bones. Maybe the blood in the sand is the last straw. Whatever it is, Moses snaps. He kills the Egyptian and buries the body. Not very prince-like behavior. And just like that, he's not a prince anymore. Word gets out. Pharaoh wants him dead. And so, Moses does what every prophet seems to do at some point. He runs. Far from the palace, far from the river, into the wilderness, into exile. He becomes a shepherd in Midian, tending sheep that aren't his, married to a woman he barely knows, haunted by a past he can't fix. 40 years go by. 40. Can you imagine? The voice of God waiting that long to speak again, or worse, waiting that long to finally say something. But when it happens, it's weird. One day, Moses is walking with his sheep when he notices a bush on fire. Nothing too strange, except this bush isn't burning up. It just burns, bright and calm, like it knows it's being watched. Moses, curious, or bored, or just tired of sheep, approaches. And the bush speaks. Moses. He probably jumps 3 feet in the air. God introduces himself, not with thunder, but with intimacy. "I am the God of your fathers. Take off your sandals. This is holy ground." No booming chorus. No smoke machines. Just one man, one bush, and the weight of something sacred. And then, God drops the mission. "Go back to Egypt. Tell Pharaoh to let my people go." Moses? He panics. He stammers. "I'm not the right guy. I can't even speak well. Send someone else." But God insists. Not forcefully, not with lightning. Just persistently. Like he's not looking for perfect words. Just a willing heart. You can almost hear him thinking, "Your excuses are cute, but I'm not calling your resume. I'm calling you." Eventually, reluctantly, Moses agrees. He heads back to Egypt with his brother Aaron as a translator and a staff that's about to become famous. And when he walks into Pharaoh's court, head high, sandals dusty, eyes full of desert sun, he speaks words no one expects from a fugitive shepherd. "Let my people go." Pharaoh laughs naturally. "Who is this God you're talking about?" Cue the drama. 10 plagues, one after another, each one stranger than the last. Rivers turn to blood. Frogs invade kitchens. Flies, boils, hail, darkness. It's like a divine protest with special effects. Each plague isn't random. It's a direct challenge to an Egyptian god. Historians still debate how much of this is allegory, how much is exaggeration. But one thing's clear. The message isn't subtle. I'm not just freeing a people. I'm dismantling a worldview. And then, the final blow. The death of every firstborn in Egypt. A night of dread. A night so heavy, even silence seems to cry. Except the Hebrews, who mark their doors with lamb's blood. An act of trust, a symbol of mercy. Morning comes, Egypt wails, and Pharaoh, broken at last, lets them go. Thousands of Hebrews walk out, led by Moses, clutching what little they own. Some carrying bread that didn't have time to rise. Some carrying the bones of ancestors. All of them walking into an impossible future. And you think that's the climax? It's just the warm-up. Because Pharaoh changes his mind. He chases them with his army. Chariots thundering behind. The sea ahead. It's a trap. And Moses? He lifts his staff. You know this part. Even if you've only seen it in a movie. The Red Sea parts. Walls of water, trembling but held. The people walk through on dry land. And once they've crossed, Moses lowers his hand. The sea returns. Pharaoh's army vanishes beneath the waves. Freedom. Finally. But not peace. Because now they're in the wilderness. And freedom is uncomfortable. It doesn't come with Wi-Fi or snack breaks. People complain. Hunger. Thirst. Nostalgia for slavery. Because at least it came with soup. Still, Moses leads. He climbs mountains. Talks to God. Comes down with stone tablets and sunburns. He ages. wears the burden of a million doubters. And still, he carries on. And maybe, just maybe, God never said, leadership is easy. Maybe he thought, true leaders bleed in silence and keep going anyway. Tonight, as you breathe slower, think about Moses, not as the miracle man, but as the stuttering, angry, reluctant soul who said yes. Think about the fire that didn't burn out. And next time, we'll sit beside a young boy with a harp and a sling, singing to sheep under starlight, before giants enter the story. The desert fades. You feel the air shift, cooler now, tinged with olive trees and wind-stirred grass. Somewhere in the distance a lyre hums, and sheep bleat like bored background actors. You're no longer in palaces or parted seas. Tonight, you're in the hills of Bethlehem, and there he is. A boy. No taller than your shoulder. Sunburned nose. Dirt under his fingernails. He's tuning a harp while keeping half an eye on the sheep, half an ear on the wind, and half a heart on the stars. Yes, David is too young, too small, and definitely too unqualified. So naturally he's God's choice. Because while people pick kings by height and jawline, God picks them by heartbeat. You lean back on a warm rock and watch him strum, a soft, haunting melody. It's not concert-worthy. Not yet. But it's the sound of someone who listens deeply to things most people never hear. And just like that, you hear hooves, dust, urgency. A man with wild eyes, Samuel the prophet, rides up to David's family. He's on a secret mission. Anoint the next king. But he doesn't know who yet. Jesse, David's father, lines up his sons. Tall ones, handsome ones, soldier-shaped sons with confident grins. And each time Samuel thinks, surely this is the one. But no. God's whisper is, clear. I don't look at what you look at. I see hearts. David isn't even in the lineup. He's out in the field, forgotten, probably composing a ballad about sheep breath. They call him in. He smells like goat. And then the oil pours. The future king, anointed in secret. No throne, no crown, just sheep and songs. And you might think, well, that's sweet. Let's give him a sword now. But no, God lets him wait. Because being anointed doesn't mean you're ready. It means you've been seen. And so, David goes back to shepherding, to singing lullabies to lambs and composing psalms that will one day comfort millions. And in the meantime, something strange happens. A giant shows up. His name is Goliath, 9 feet tall, muscles like marble, armor like a truck. He walks out every morning into the valley and mocks the Israelites, dares them to fight. For 40 days, no one moves, because no one wants to die on YouTube. But David, young, unimpressive, with a lunch basket for his brothers, hears the giant and blinks. Is no one going to do something about this guy? Everyone laughs. He's too big to fight. David shrugs. He's too big to miss. He grabs 5 smooth stones, declines the king's armor because it doesn't fit, and walks out like he's just taking out the trash. And you, sitting nearby, practically holding your breath, you almost want to cover your eyes. David steps into the valley, stone and sling, heart steady, thwip, thud. The giant falls. Not a dramatic wrestling match. Not an hour-long battle. Just one perfectly aimed stone and gravity. And silence. The kind of silence you get after a plot twist no one saw coming. David becomes a hero overnight. He gets fame. Favor. The king's approval. Even marriage into the royal family. But also, enemies. King Saul, the very man who applauded him, starts eyeing David like a threat. Paranoia blooms. And soon, David's playing harp one moment and dodging spears the next. You realize something unsettling. Sometimes being chosen makes you a target. David spends years on the run. From caves to deserts, he hides like a criminal while writing psalms that still breathe today. He spares Saul's life twice. Once while the king is sleeping, once while the king is using the bathroom. Yes, that's in there. It's a very human Bible. And you wonder if God is thinking, you want a crown? Learn humility first. learn restraint, learn mercy. Eventually, Saul dies. David weeps. He weeps for his enemy. Then finally, the crown fits. He becomes king. Not just any king, the golden standard of kingship. A warrior, a poet, a leader who dances in the street, who cries when his enemies die, who writes love songs to God in the same breath he plans military strategy. But he's not perfect, and this is important, because somewhere in that palace of cedar and silk, David begins to slip. Not with a sword, not with a psalm, with a glance, Bathsheba, bathing, a rooftop, a heartbeat too long. He takes her, and when she becomes pregnant, David doesn't confess. He conspires. Her husband, Uriah, is summoned from war, tricked, manipulated. When he refuses to be used, David signs his death warrant. The man who once spared his enemy now kills his loyal friend, and it's here that the silence creeps in again. You almost expect thunder, judgment, fire from heaven. Instead, God sends a prophet. Nathan tells David a story about a rich man stealing a poor man's only lamb. David burns with anger. That man deserves to die. Nathan turns. You are that man. And something cracks open. David doesn't deny, doesn't excuse. He just breaks. He writes a psalm, a raw, bleeding confession. Create in me a clean heart, O God. And that, perhaps more than his victories, is why David is remembered, not for being flawless, but for always returning. And maybe, just maybe, God never said, be perfect. Maybe he thought, be honest, be mine, always come back. So tonight, as your eyelids begin to droop and the melody of a harp drifts through your memory, let David's story sink into your bones. Chosen doesn't mean comfortable. Forgiven doesn't mean forgotten, but grace, it lingers, soft as a lullaby, stronger than a sword. Next time, we'll walk with a prophet who cooked bread over cow dung, battled depression, and still called fire down from heaven. There's smoke in the air now, not from battle, not from incense, but from something much less poetic. Dung. Yes, cow dung. And not just any cow dung either. The baked, crusty kind you dry out in the sun and stack like sad little pancakes. It's the only fuel the prophet has left for cooking his bread. Welcome to the world of Elijah. You feel your sandals stick slightly to the cracked ground. The breeze tastes dry, like ash. There's famine, drought, and tension in the air like a storm that refuses to break. Israel has turned its back on everything sacred, worshipping Baal and partying like they're in some ancient version of Vegas, and into this chaos walks a man with wild hair, sun-wrinkled eyes, and a voice like thunder. You don't even hear his footsteps until he's already shouting at the sky. Elijah doesn't knock. He kicks the door open and announces that there will be no rain, no dew, not even a decent drizzle until he says so. And then he disappears. No, really, he just walks into the wilderness where God sends ravens to feed him bread and meat. Breakfast, dinner, on a beak-to-mouth delivery system. Uber Eats, prophetic edition. You sit beside him by a slowly drying brook. He's calm, like someone who knows silence better than speech. But even prophets get thirsty, and when the water runs out, he's sent to a widow, a woman gathering sticks to cook her final meal before she and her son starve to death. It's a dramatic entrance, and Elijah says, "Make me a loaf first." Imagine saying that to someone whose pantry has a single scoop of flour and a drip of oil, but she does it, and miracle of miracles, every time she scoops, there's more. The flour never runs out, the oil never dries. Not once, not twice, every day. Until, of course, her son dies. Because life isn't just one long string of victories, even with God in the story. She looks at Elijah with eyes that ask every question you've ever whispered in the dark. Did you come to remind me of my sin? To kill my son? Elijah doesn't argue. He just carries the boy to an upper room, lays him out, and pleads with a voice that cracks. "O Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." And for the first time in the Bible, resurrection happens, Quiet, no lightning, no choir, just breath returning where it had stopped. You watch Elijah exhale and carry the boy back down the stairs. The widow weeps. You do too a little, but don't get too comfortable, because the real showdown is coming. The stage? Mount Carmel. Think, spiritual WrestleMania. Elijah is alone against 450 prophets of Baal, and the audience is the entire nation of Israel. Here's the challenge. 2 altars, 2 bulls, 2 prayers. The God who answers with fire is God. Baal's prophets go first. All day they chant, dance, cut themselves, hoping to trigger divine pyrotechnics. Nothing. Elijah watches for hours, and then with the sass level of a stand-up comic he leans in and says, "Maybe your God is busy, or sleeping, or using the bathroom?" You nearly choke laughing. Then Elijah steps up. But first, he douses his altar in water, buckets of it, enough to make a moat, because if you're going to ask for fire, might as well make it extra impossible. He prays simply, and suddenly, whoosh, fire falls. Not a spark, not a candle flicker, but a holy inferno that consumes stone, sacrifice, water, and every last doubt. The crowd falls silent, then to their knees. And you think, this is the high point, the epic, the movie finale, except it's not. Because right after the fire, Elijah runs, not from the people, from Jezebel, the queen who sends him a death threat that feels all too believable. She doesn't shout. She sends a messenger, a sentence. You'll be dead by tomorrow. That's all it takes. The prophet who called down fire now flees into the wilderness. You follow at a distance. The rocks scrape your feet. The silence this time is heavier. Not holy, just hollow. Elijah collapses under a broom tree and whispers something you've maybe thought before. "I've had enough, Lord. Take my life." And it hits you. Even fire collars break. Even the strongest can crumble in the dark. But God doesn't scold him, doesn't quote scripture or list reasons to be grateful. Instead, God sends an angel with food, freshly baked bread, water, a gentle touch. Eat. Rest. Sometimes what heaven sends isn't a miracle, but a meal. And after more sleep, more walking, Elijah finds himself in a cave, alone, depressed, tired. He hears wind tear through the mountains, loud, violent. But God's not in it. Then an earthquake shakes the ground. Still no God. Then fire. Still not him. And finally, a whisper, a still small voice. And that's when Elijah wraps his face and steps out. Because God doesn't always shout. Sometimes he murmurs, so soft you almost miss it. He tells Elijah, "You're not alone. There are thousands like you. And your job isn't over." And in that moment, you feel something stir. Maybe faith isn't about loud victories. Maybe it's about quiet endurance. Maybe the deepest moments with God aren't when you're calling down fire, but when you're curled under a tree wondering if anyone cares, and he shows up with warm bread. So tonight, if you're tired, if you're running, if you feel like the storm has stolen your voice, remember Elijah. And remember the whisper. Because maybe God never said, "You should always be strong." Maybe he thought, "You can cry here. I brought snacks." Next time, we meet someone who wrestled with God himself and limped away, changed forever. You're limping now, not from the desert rocks or the long storytelling night, but from something deeper, an ache in the soul, like a question you can't quite name. And that's perfect, because tonight you find yourself in the shadow of a man who limped away from God with a new name and a bruised hip. His name was Jacob. Well, not at first. At first his name meant something closer to trickster, or if we're being generous, clever negotiator with boundary issues. He came into the world clutching his brother's heel, already trying to get ahead. And his life, well, it was a long series of what today we might call mildly manipulative entrepreneurial moves. You follow him through years of schemes, stealing his brother Esau's blessing by dressing in goat fur, running away to his uncle Laban, only to get conned himself into marrying the wrong sister, and then slowly building wealth through divine favor and very creative livestock breeding strategies. Seriously, Jacob invented the ancient version of selective cow tinder, but all these years, he's been running, not just from Esau, from himself, from the consequences of who he's been, until tonight. Tonight, you walk with him toward a river called Jabbok. It's dark, his wives and children and flocks are already across. He's alone, and that's when it happens. Someone tackles him. No warning, no torchlight, no thunder, just a stranger in the dark. They wrestle. All night. No words, no swords, just limbs and breath and dust and desperation. You try to make out shapes in the moonlight. You don't know if this is an angel, a man, a spirit, a dream. But Jacob, he clings. Not just for victory, for survival, for identity, for something real, finally, after a lifetime of masks. And as the sun begins to rise, the figure touches Jacob's hip, and instantly, something pops. He gasps. The pain is sharp, permanent. Still he doesn't let go. "I will not let you go unless you bless me," he says. And for the first time, the voice answers, "What is your name?" Jacob swallows. It's not just a question, it's a confession. He says it out loud, Jacob, trickster, deceiver, and the reply, "Not anymore. Your name will be Israel, for you have wrestled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." You sit down on a rock, heart pounding, because something in that moment feels terrifyingly honest. God didn't overpower him, didn't lecture him, didn't punish him for wrestling. He blessed him for it. And suddenly you wonder, maybe faith isn't about having perfect answers. Maybe it's about the willingness to struggle in the dark until morning comes. Jacob limps. Away from that night, he's never the same again. But then again, how could you be? When you've wrestled God and lived, when you've been renamed by pain, when your walk changes forever, literally, because of an encounter that looked like a fight, but turned out to be grace. And here's where it gets even stranger. The next day, Jacob finally sees Esau, the brother he cheated, the one who once vowed to kill him. You expect revenge. Instead, Esau runs to him, embraces him, weeps. No war, no retribution, just reconciliation. Jacob, Israel, looks at his brother's face and says, "To see your face is like seeing the face of God." You blink, because wait, wasn't it just last night that he wrestled with God in the dark? And now he sees God in the face of the person he wronged. Yes, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the divine is not just in the dramatic struggle, the cosmic mystery, but also in the human forgiveness, the earthly mercy. Maybe both moments are sacred. You trail behind Israel for a bit longer. He builds altars now, talks to God more, still limps. Every step a reminder that blessings often come with bruises, and late one night, he gathers his sons and blesses them, one by one, among them, Joseph, the dreamer, the betrayed, the eventual savior of Egypt. But that's another story. For now you focus on Jacob, the man who spent a lifetime fighting, tricking, striving, until God met him not with punishment, but with presence. Maybe God never said, "Never. Question me." Maybe he thought, "Come wrestle, I can take it." Maybe the questions, the midnight struggles, the years of wandering, maybe they're not obstacles to faith. Maybe they are faith. So tonight, if you find yourself grappling with doubts or regrets or confusing dreams, don't be afraid of the fight. God's not. He meets you in the mud, in the dark, in the silence between questions, and if you limp away, so be it. It means you showed up. Next time, we'll walk the scorched earth of a city turned to salt and explore what mercy looks like. When the sky is falling, you're standing now, at the edge of a plain that stretches wide and empty beneath a heavy sky. The kind of sky that feels like it's pressing down, as if the earth itself is holding its breath. This is the land of Sodom, a place infamous, in history, a city whose name has become shorthand for destruction and judgment. You walk cautiously through its ruins, though the stones are strangely warm underfoot. You hear the wind whisper secrets from a time long past, and the silence feels thick with stories no one dares tell out loud. Sodom was no ordinary city. It was a place where people indulged in every desire, where morality seemed twisted like the smoke rising from its burning remains. The story you know, fire and brimstone raining from the sky, a city turned to ashes, has been told countless times. But there's a quieter, less heard tale hidden in the shadows of that devastation. It begins with one man. Lot, nephew of Abraham, had chosen to settle in Sodom, lured by the fertile land and bustling trade. He was a man caught between two worlds, the wilderness of faith he came from and the decadent city life he was drawn into. You find yourself following him through crowded streets, filled with people shouting, bargaining, laughing too loud. But there's a tension beneath the noise, a sense of looming doom you can't shake. One evening, as the sun dips low, two strangers arrive at Lot's doorstep. They are no ordinary travelers. They are angels, messengers cloaked in human disguise, here to warn Lot of the city's impending destruction. You hear Lot's heart pounding as he offers hospitality, despite the growing danger. You see the desperation in his eyes as the men of Sodom surround his home, demanding to see the visitors. And here's a detail you might not expect. Lot offers his own daughters to protect his guests. A grim, unsettling offer that makes you wince. The stakes here are brutal. Life and death, mercy and judgment tangled in a knot you can barely untie. The angels intervene, blinding the aggressors with a sudden flash. They urge Lot and his family to flee, to escape the wrath that is about to fall. As you run alongside them, you see the smoke rising like a dark curtain. But something strikes you. Lot hesitates, not once, but twice. His heart clings to the city he's about to lose. And then, the command. Do not look back. You watch as his wife turns, and in an instant, she becomes a pillar of salt, a statue frozen in regret. You step closer to that pillar, feeling the cold weight of consequences that linger long after the flames have died. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Lot and his daughters find refuge in a cave, a place so isolated, so shadowed, it feels like the very end of the world. And it is here, in the quiet aftermath, that the story becomes deeply human and deeply troubling. Fearing they are the last people alive, Lot's daughters make a desperate choice. They get their father drunk and bear children by him. You pause, heart heavy. This isn't the fairy tale ending. It's raw, complicated, messy. From this desperate act come the ancestors of two nations, Moab and Ammon, names that echo through history with their own stories of conflict and kinship. Historians still debate what this means. Is it a story of survival, of desperation, or a reflection on human frailty and divine judgment? Whatever the answer, it reminds you that ancient texts don't shy away from the shadows. They expose the tangled threads of morality, survival, and consequence. And maybe that's a lesson God never said out loud but might have thought. Life isn't always neat. Mercy and judgment coexist in uneasy balance, and sometimes the people caught in the middle make choices that challenge everything you thought you knew about right and wrong. You step away from the cave, feeling the weight of history pressing on your shoulders. The fire and salt are not just ancient punishments, they're echoes of decisions made in fear, love, and hope twisted by circumstance. Tonight, as you lie back, consider this. Maybe God never said, everything will be fair. Maybe he thought, this story is complicated, and so is life. And as the night deepens, remember that even in destruction, there are threads of humanity that refuse to be erased. Next time, we'll step into the quiet world of a man who heard God's voice, not in fire or wind, but in a whisper, and learn what it means to listen when everything else is shouting. You find yourself standing in a vast, silent wilderness, the kind of place where the air feels thick with stillness, and every breath you take seems to echo through the quiet. This is the wilderness where a man named Elijah wandered, a prophet who heard God not in thunder or earthquake, but in a gentle whisper. Elijah's story is one of extremes. You follow him as he escapes from threats and fears, wandering alone, exhausted, and ready to give up. He hides in caves, he prays, he confronts kings and false prophets, and yet, in the silence of the desert, he searches for something real, something true. One day, after a fierce storm, after fire that consumed everything, Elijah waits, heart pounding, for the voice of God. And it comes, not in the fire, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, but in a still, small voice. You lean in, feeling the contrast. The world is noisy, chaotic, demanding your attention like an overenthusiastic barista. But here, in this moment, God's presence is subtle, almost like a lullaby in a crowded room. And maybe that's the divine lesson Elijah teaches us. God might not always shout. Sometimes, the most profound truths come wrapped in silence. You think about how often your own life feels like a storm, raging thoughts, endless distractions, noise that drowns out the quiet wisdom inside you. But Elijah's experience reminds you that listening requires stillness. Not just the kind where you close your eyes, but the kind where you open your heart to the whispers beneath the noise. And here's the beautiful irony. Elijah, the fiery prophet, the man who called down fire from heaven, finds God in a whisper. And maybe God never said, "Be loud to be heard." Maybe he thought, sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest power. You sit with that thought as the night deepens, feeling the calm seep into your bones. You've journeyed through trickery and blessing, destruction and mercy, wrestling and whispering. You've met Jacob who limped with new names, Lot who fled, cities of fire, and Elijah who listened in silence. And through it all, one thing becomes clear. Faith isn't about perfect scripts or clear answers. It's about wrestling with the questions, stumbling through the shadows, and sometimes just being still enough to hear the quiet voice beneath the chaos. As you settle deeper into your pillow, you feel the tension slowly unravel. The world outside may be loud and confusing, but inside this quiet space, there's peace. The peace that comes from knowing that it's okay to wrestle, to question, to stumble. That God meets you there, in the fight, in the flight, and in the stillness. So, as your eyes grow heavy and the world dims to soft whispers, let yourself drift. Let the stories and the lessons mingle with your dreams. And remember, whatever you wrestle with tonight, whatever you hesitate to leave behind, whatever whispers you seek to hear, you're not alone. There's a presence that meets you where you are, gentle, patient, ever near. Now, as the last breath of this story settles, the night wraps around you like a soft blanket. Breathe deep, let go, and rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.